I haven't dated my girlfriend for 2 months. I've been over to her house a considerable amount of times. But tonight was different. Like any 16-year-old guy, I'd walk with a hot call to have sex with a girl anytime my parents were at home. But nighttime in our house was different. Something was always off, if you know what I mean. I found it especially troubling going upstairs to the bathroom at night. Always as if I was being watched or followed closely. I'll be home a little later than thought. Just go inside, my mum's called her. Her mum always liked me. Swear not, she'd let me write it. I was just leaving for a while to meet my fiancée for dinner. You'll have the run of the place until Janie gets home. Just don't steal anything. Her mum shot me a cheeky grin, winked, and then walked out the door. I retired to the living room and started watching Seinfeld on Hulu when I needed it to pee. I hated those stairs, especially being dark, and even more so being alone. I tried turning on the staircase lights. Why don't your entry-list lights work? Jamie replied with, they do. If only about the day tops. We don't know why. Creep meter broken. I literally sprinted up the stairs, did my business, and exited the bathroom, and this is when it happened. Her dog Maxwell was growling at something down at the other end of the hall, though it didn't sound like a Pomeranian, more like a fucking Rottweiler. A very angry, gravely growl. Max, it's just me, I shouted, before nearly tumbling back down 15 steps. Maxwell always sleeps up there this time of night. I was relieved when I heard the car door slam in the driveway. Janie was finally home. I'd never let her know how truly scared her house made me. Despite this, I rented Sinister because it just fit the mood I was in, and I waited for her to come into the house to begin playback. And that's when she came walk through the door. Her back was to me and she was shutting the door, but the sentence was already on its way out of her palatable mouth. Babe, your dumb dog is acting really fucking whoop. Then she turned her face to me, and I began falling inside, and the hairs all over my body stood at attention. In her arms was Maxwell. She took him to her cousin's house to play with the kids. What were you saying about Max? She asked. Oh, nothing. I didn't realize it was with you. So what was it? Nothing. Let's just go as TV. Though I didn't go near those stairs again, I kept seeing shadowy movements out of my periphery, right near the front door, but when I looked, it stopped. Ever since, she's been coming to my house instead. At first, because I asked to, but then it was at her request. Because Maxwell died in his sleep at 13 years old, and since the day he died, she's repeatedly said something to me that chills my blood. Since I was 3 years old, I used to think it was Maxwell growling at me in the middle of the night, just outside the bathroom door. But now he's dead, and it's still happening. Only now, it's coming from my closet. One night around 2 a.m., I flipped through the channels while relaxing on the couch. I watched the end of the Married with Children episode before the screen went black, and shifted to something else, Seinfeld. Seinfeld is my favourite show of all time, but something was off here. It opened as it usually did, for 6 seasons at least, with Jerry Seinfeld doing a stand-up bit. However, on this episode, Jerry stood at her mic, sickly and nodding off. He was slurring his words terribly and his face was pale. Trying to use the mic stand as leverage, he fell to the ground. Blood was everywhere, squirting out of his nose, and despite this, his eyes were still closed. Soon, a crew member ran out, grabbed a hold of Jerry, and chauffeured him off stage, hunched over, holding his stomach, looking like he might vomit. Then the show opened up. I'd never seen this episode before, of course I haven't. I watched every episode hundreds of times. Joe was never escorted off stage before. All I thought was, why leave that trip in? What the hell is this? I was mystified. The show began with Jerry standing in his kitchen, staring at nothing. However, it wasn't the kitchen from a show previous. Since inside of some rundown rat hole, stuff was everywhere. Bowls, dishes, dripping stains on the walls, totally unkept. This wasn't like Jerry. He had 2 black eyes, mouth agape, with drool running to the floor, eyes barely open. Then he got a ring from the buzzer. Without asking, he simply let them in. I was mortified to see what came next. It was Elaine. She opened the door and walked in. Elaine was wearing a torn, strained blue sweatshirt and black pants. She looked worse than Jerry. Her skin was pale, and she was bone thin. She had scars on her face, makeup running, and hair matted and wild. Joe, wake up. She patted him on the back. Huh? Was all that he could muster. Joe, wake up. Wake up! What? he replied, wiping his face. I need something for today. Here, $20. She placed $20 on the kitchen counter. Her speech was shaky and rapid, like she was chomping at the bit. She needed a fix, was what I was picking up on. Like a zombie, Jerry grabbed a hold of and pocketed the money and slowly walked over to her and fell into the couch. You need more now? You just put 20 bags last night. Yeah, Jerry, but you know how that Brody stuff is weak. You'll turn into fucking junkie, breathed Jerry, head tilted back, eyes rolled up into his skull. Jerry began to weep. George is dead, he said to Elaine. Elaine stood there for a few seconds, biting her nails and nervously pacing. Her only response was, "Is she not going to help me out today? Fine, I'll go and ask Andre." She stomped out of the room cold and callously, without showing a single modicum of grief or sorrow over the news, and slammed the door. The very next scene depicted an angry slumlord banging on Jerry's door with all his might, raging at Jerry opening his fucking door. Imagine a sitcom on basic cable and they say, "Fuck, Jesus." The landlord finally opened the door, and the camera cuts from the hallway and angry landlord to inside the brown-stained, off-white coloured walls, and worst of all, to Jerry, sitting on the kitchen floor with his back against the wall, with a needle protruding from his arm under a rolled-up sleeve. "You damn junkie waste of life. Here." He balls up a piece of paper and throws it off Jerry's head. "Your eviction notice. 14 days to pack your shit and leave." The slumlord then cocked his head back to Jerry over his shoulder and said one other thing, "You fucking loser." The scene faded to black with Jerry giggling and simultaneously crying in a state of utter despair. It was incredibly difficult to watch and it made me sick. Elaine then came wobbling into Jerry's apartment high as a kite and fell to the floor. She pulled the needle out of his arm and held him as he was barely conscious and cried out, "Why did it have to be this way? What did we ever do to deserve this?" The next scene was even more mortifying. It started off tame. I got to see Kramer again. It cut to Kramer sitting in his living room with nice, neat furniture. He was much older, grey-haired and thin, but he looked good. What's different was his hair, not wild like before, cut short and very even. Jerry's on the other line. The scene cuts back and forth from a POV shot of both characters. The verbal exchange aside, the tone and theme of the conversations shifted dramatically. Jerry was the nervous and frantic one. Kramer was very calm and collected, the mirror opposite of the original show. It went like this. Kramer, hello? Jerry, it's me. How you doing, buddy? I talked to my landlord. He's kicking me out in 2 weeks. I can't go through this with you again. It won't be like last time, Kramer. It's so cold. I'd be below freezing. I'll die out there. Jerry, you made this decision to be a hopeless drug addict, not me. Your situation is just... No, I can't do it. For all time's sake, Kramer, don't you remember what it was like 20 years ago? How we were such good friends? All those funny, crazy things we got ourselves into? Remember? 1,000 years ago. Please, tell me what I can do. I can help you if I get one thing. You know what it is? I can't do that again. I'll give you money. No, just this Jerry left audibly crying for several seconds. Oh, okay. The film cuts out. The show ends with a montage. We watch Kramer zipping up his pants and buckling his belt. Elaine is then shown in a cheap hotel room where a guy runs out of the room without paying her as she screams obscenities at the top of her lungs. She's clad in very revealing lingerie. She reaches into her purse and grabs a needle and bag and just stares at them on the bed as she sits Indian style. Jerry is shown pale, nearing blue, his tongue protruding from his mouth, beginning to vomit, lying on his back as he begins drowning. The landlord is there, looking down at him, but refusing to roll him on his side, while he flashed a sinister smile. And scarred for life, I told myself. Finally, a camera slowly zooms in on George's gravestone, indicating he died in 2019, but we never know why. This happened to me several other times. It was always the same episode. I wanted it to go away. I scoured the internet for info about a lost Seinfeld episode, but nothing ever came up. During another of this show's airing, I changed the channel during a commercial break, and went back. Nothing. It's like the old 80s show Night Court. Honestly don't know what it was, but it surely didn't feel like a hoax. I hadn't seen the house since 1996. It's the haven of my entire youth and all my best memories of my life. It was myself, my mum and dad, up until 1993, when my father died of an inoperable brain tumour. My mum eventually got married, and we had to move away. The most heart-wrenching moment of my life was the last time we pulled out of our driveway, and I watched the house go smaller and smaller the further we drove, until it disappeared. I pulled over on the side of the neighbour's house after the viewing and watched my old home. Our pool was gone, porch torn down and replaced with an addition. Trees all cut. I just wanted to see inside it one last time. They say the older you grow, the smaller your childhood house seems. I walked around the house to find the garage door up, lights on, and the sound of a buzzsaw cutting through wood. The smell of the woods and chips was potent, a serene, smokery hickory scent. I knocked on the wall. Hello? The noise stopped. A man turned and approached me, wearing heavy-duty gloves and protective eyewear, and then he pulled them off. I began to fall inside. My dad was buried 28 years ago this month, and yet my father was standing before me. Can I help you? And then he just halted his conversation and looked at me with an air of primal terror, like I was there to harm him. He slowly backed away as I cried out "But Dad? Is that really you?" Suddenly a little boy came running around to the garage from the backyard. "Caught 22 lightning bugs, Dad." "Go upstairs, Greg." The boy was me. Greg is my name. In fact, I remember this day when I caught all those bugs and my dad cut his hand. The man had a thick bandage taped around his thumb knuckle. I made one last play before remembering one other thing. When I was 8 years old, on this same day, I remembered a man standing across from my dad, crying and watching me as I ran up steps. I heard my dad say to the man exactly what he said to me. "I'll call the police if you don't leave." I've been too afraid to go back. I know that echoes only travel through sound, but now I believe echoing can transcend beyond just the audible. I wasn't on drugs, hallucinating or dreaming. All I know is that my family lives in the house. That's me in there. I wonder, if I kill myself, will I be transported to the body of that boy that is undeniably my doppelganger? Oh, how I've longed to see Dad again. Maybe I can start over. But then again, he did whisper something in my ear that is truly the reason I'm writing this. He leaned in, cheek to cheek, and whispered, "You come back, you'll traumatize him. For his sake and yours, please." My fiancée and I decided to go up to my parents' cabin for the weekend. We both just graduated high school and had planned a weekend of relaxation and intimacy months ago. In reality, we're on the cusp of a breakup, and we figured we'd give salvaging the last few remnants of our seemingly failed relationship a shot, before we both went our separate ways to college, 1,500 miles from one another. The 3-hour drive was mostly silence, aside from the occasional menial exchanges from myself or her over what the person entering the gas station wanted to pick up for the other. That once I caught her wiping a tear from her cheek, motivating me to tune out reality with Victorian-era chamber pieces on the AM radio, the only working station in the Appalachians of the Romans. We finally arrived and settled in, myself carrying and organising luggage contents, while she swayed back and forth from the porch swinging chain smoke and mint-scented jewel. I figured I'd be the one breaking silence with a romantic gesture. Candlelight, blazed carnations, and a night of 3 Riesling. When she finally decided to join me, she simply charged past me and callously commented, "I'm taking a nap." I went outside, busted the bottle of wine against a tree, and went on a hike down a trail a mile to the lake with my headphones in and iPhone clipped to my shorts. I sat at the shore and watched the pink evening sky descend to dark blue, and that's when I got the ding. "Greg, please come back. Somebody's here. Please come back." I tossed our head into the water and sprinted back to the cabin. When I got back, the door was dead bolted shut. Lindsay opened it just a crack, and after seeing it was me, opened the door and let me in. I tried calling on the way back, but I had no research. Great. Does somebody else live near here? I mean, there's scattered cabins all around the mountain, but why? What happened? A man knocked at the door like half an hour ago. I thought it was you until I opened it. So, who was it? I don't know. It's a really weird-looking guy, asking if Wilma was home. Wilma? You serious? Yes, he replied. I assume this would have been benign, had she not been compulsively chewing off her nails. Okay, I don't know what you're so afraid of. Probably just some local mistaking our place for another. But it was his face. He was wearing a rimmed hat, and the shadow covered his eyes, but his mouth... His dentures were falling out as he spoke. It was just really fucking creepy. But then, I felt it all over my body, the hairs standing up everywhere, when her eyes averted their attention from my face to the window over my shoulder, as they grew wide with a palpable, primal sense of fear. Greg, she whispered so faintly I could hardly hear her, despite my face only being 3 inches from hers. She pressed her lips against my ear. Slowly turn around and look. Do not turn on the lights. Pinewood Drive. It's a street of my old neighbourhood which intersected with mine a few blocks down. There's a local legend that back in 1983, a 16-year-old girl was walking home from school when she was struck by a car operated by a drunk driver. Her body was thrown 100 feet and she died on impact. Her ghost is known to roam the neighbourhood, but only when it rains. She died during a storm. Though pedestrians are often killed by drunk or erratic drivers, her death held even more potency within our town because she had just found out she was pregnant 1 week earlier. Legend has it that in fact she was struck because she had an abortion and was walking home from the clinic. God's wrath. She walks the streets now in limbo, tricking drivers into picking her up and exacting her vengeance against them in various ways. Once I was able to drive, my friends and I, usually drunk, would case the neighbourhood in our cars, looking for Selma, the Pinewood goat. One particular night, just as it began to drizzle, we slowly rolled up on a girl walking on the side of the road in a red coat, but without an umbrella, a telltale sign, since one of her tricks was to lure drivers who seek to get her out of the rain. We crawled alongside her, despite the protesting from myself and our friend Jeff, both in passenger seats. Ah, damn, it's just Jill, my friend KJ sighed. We rolled down our window. Jilly Vanley, need a ride? Ah, yes, please. We're all relieved. I moved over so she could sit beside me. After she shut the door and thanked us, we explained who we thought she was. Just then, the rain began to downpour heavily. After telling her about our comical assertion, she stayed silent. Odd for a girl like Jill, who's usually extremely talkative, sometimes so much that we have to tell it short. But the silence was unlike her. You must be thinking, I know what's about to happen. You picked up the ghost instead of Jill. Nope. I looked directly at her face. It was, in fact, Jill. After the conversation about Selma ended, Jill slowly picked up her head and said, Do you know how Selma tricked drivers into picking her up? Yeah, said Jeff. She walks around with an umbrella. Without an umbrella, and people feel bad to give her a ride. Then Jill said, Do you know how else? We remained silent, waiting for her to reply. When she responded, her voice devolved into a sinister, shrill murmur. She tricks them by looking like someone they know. Suddenly the car screeched to a halt, and I noticed terror in KJ's eyes through the rearview mirror as an evil cackling sound out of the mouth of the girl sitting next to me. For a split second, I turned to look at a terrifying, disfigured space, gleaming at me with missing teeth and blood running out of her mouth. We all ran out of the car screaming. KJ's car was eventually towed, and the next day in school, Jill told us she'd been home all night. It's been 20 years, and I remain terrified of the rain. I find myself unable to keep from falling into delicate trances. The sunlight's vibrancy is gone and its potency devolved into curious dimness. Everywhere I look, I see the frowning face of Jesus Christ on the walls as Willie Nelson's family Bible plays in an endless loop in my consciousness like a curse. Children, my sister, we were twins, and all I see in my mind when I think of her is that blood-soaked shoe in mid-air, our mom screaming like a psychotic from the porch. Her bicycle is as twisted and mangled as my incessant nightmares, which continue to evolve into such things I'd rather not describe. What are the nightmares about? I think it's important we delve into them. I don't know how to describe it. I'm basically linguistically illiterate. If you can describe yourself as linguistically illiterate, then you're very literate. Well, it's a ranch. Like a wooden ranch house with a porch swing, probably 200 years old. Out in the middle of the desert. But not a hot desert. Chilly, like Colorado. With serene mountains as the backdrop. But when I enter the house, the interior is enormous. But the rooms always match dream to dream, with that horrible, distasteful green shaggy carpeting. And what scares me about it? When I'm inside, despite it being basically a tiny cabin, suddenly it has 2 stories. There's nobody there, and yet I get this overwhelming sense of dread. I know something or someone is lurking. But those stairs, she's up there. Inside it's decorated very elegantly. A large living room with a massive TV and stereo system. In the back, a kitchen. Downstairs looks like a sewage system. Despite its sophisticated decor, I can smell something rotting. From up there. From her. She's up there. Who? I don't know. A girl, a woman, short black hair. You've seen her? No, maybe once, briefly. There's a mirror on the wall atop the first of the steps. I could see her reflection, crawling down the top of the steps backwards, like a contortionist. But when I saw her awful face, hair dangling upside down, growling, I wanted to run. I've only seen her through the mirror, but subconsciously, she's threatening to finally appear before me in the flesh. What did she say? Nothing. I just knew that if I would run, she'd catch me. It's like a voice that doesn't speak. She tells me things without actually telling them. My brain, my mind is just fed the information. The threats. If I stayed put, standing in the living room, she'd stay up there. So, you see, once I get there, I can't leave. Well, she'll get me. You said woman. Could it be a sister? Even though I never see her, I know her body is all twisted and mangled. Twisted and mangled. That's the exact description you give your sister's bicycle after the accident. My sister had long brown hair. I believe she, whoever you're seeing or sensing, is a manifestation of your sister, only entangled with someone else, someone you've met or seen. Maybe at a wedding? You're starting to scare me? I'm scaring you. Why am I scaring you? I don't know. I don't know the reason. I just feel uncomfortable. Are you her? Her? You mean the woman? Yes, just tell me. Please, because I know it's coming. Honey, Rachel, I'm only a therapist. We've been seeing each other for 6 months now. Then how would you know about the wedding dress? I've never told you about that. What wedding dress? We've never talked about my nightmares until today. I'm not psychotic. Perhaps you are. You yourself described your mother as a psychotic. Why would you tell me I'm a psychotic? I didn't say anything. Have you been seeing or hearing things that aren't there? Hallucinating? I don't know where I am right now. Hun, I'm only trying to help you. Talking about these things are necessary at this point. You said, at a wedding, just as I was thinking it. And that crooked woman on the stairs, she's always in a bridal gown. I never told you that. Shh, try to relax. Why are you looking at me like that? Stop. Honey, I'm only smiling at you. You don't like it when I smile? Why are your teeth so crooked? First thing you know. I have to go. We still have all night. All night? What? I said, we still have 20 minutes left. No, that's not what you said. You know what will happen if you run. I don't care anymore. It's time I leave this place. Rachel, calm down. You can leave whenever you want. This is just a usual session. I have to feed my cat and go to the store. Goodbye. Only if you can make it down those 2 sets of steps. Stop fucking with me. Maybe we should end this now. End what? The session? No, your sanity, because you're only delaying the inevitable. Hail Mary, full of grace. Go ahead. I'll give you a running start. As Rachel shut her eyes and began to recite the rosary, the room filled with the rotting stench of bodily decay, and she felt that hot breath in her neck before the woman whispered one more thing in her ear. Open your eyes or keep them shut. It makes no difference. I first met Greta at Camp Carnaquy, a summer camp when I was 13. We became friends quickly, and each day would meet up at the pool and do flips off the diving board. By day 3, she was my best friend. It was something seemingly benign. Birthmarks. We each had them, mine on my right arm, hers on her left, in exactly the same shape, and through this little detail we formed an organically indestructible bond. Beyond words or human comprehension, we formed a kinship that would be unexplainable through words. Almost the moment we caught each other's eyes, I felt it. By day 7, the last day, we both had broken down into tears. We both held each other until our parents were forced to pull us apart. We exchanged phone information, and then we parted ways. Greta and I would talk on the phone the entire next year. But by the summer after 8th grade, one night, a strange woman answered the phone, explaining the Allens had moved away. I figured I'd hear from Greta, seeing as she had my information. This was the 90s, so if you didn't possess a landline number, you were never going to hear from that person again. I cried for days, but eventually the heartache melted away, and I accepted it. I told my parents about the birthmarks. They said it was just a coincidence, but I held my belief with ironclad conviction. My mom even went through all my baby pictures just to prove to me that I was her only child. And she was right. She showed me photos of her holding me moments after I was born, and no one else. Just this year, at age 38, I've been diagnosed with uterine cancer. My dad died 10 years ago, and now my mum is all I have left. I'm now bedridden and likely only have months to live. My mum and I were reminiscing yesterday about life, and we went through my baby pictures again, and that's when I noticed it. In one picture, she was holding me. In another, she was holding what she claimed to be me. Except in this photo, I had a birthmark on my left arm. I never noticed until now, since I was able to truly examine it. I showed the irrefutable evidence to my mother, proving her to be a liar, and she ran out of my room crying. Just this afternoon I received a call. It was Mum. She admitted to everything, except it wasn't what I imagined, not in 10 million years. She told me that doctors were baffled when she birthed twins. All of her sonogram pictures showed one fetus. She still has them and texts them to me. She wasn't lying. They clearly showed only one baby. The baby that was supposed to be born was shown to have cellulitis in the womb, a defect I was born with. The other baby was born in seamless physical condition. She sent me photos of the medical transcripts. Mum's saying the truth. Maybe it was an anomaly, I told one. It's not possible, she said. I consulted my physician. He told me that a twin can remain undetected for up to 10 weeks, but full term would be an impossibility. So why didn't you keep her? I asked. She replied, please, sweetie, let's not get into this tides. Of course, I asked why. My mother said, I'll just show you, but only in person. She quickly drove to my house with a stack of dusty photos inside of an envelope. This is why we had no choice but to give your sister away. My parents had a camera in our room when we were little, just for safety purposes. My stomach turned and my heart sank almost immediately. When the lights were on in our room, both Greta and I were lying in our cribs. When the lights went out and the camera switched to night vision, she would disappear. Maybe it was a glitch, I told my mom, reverting to screaming. You gave my sister away for a fucking glitch? Then she said it. Honey, you've never had a sister. You've had epilepsy and schizophrenia both worsening year by year your entire life. What? What about those pictures? Hannah, every time I show these pictures, you see someone else in them. Another crib, another child. But it's been you, just you, all the time. What about the girl I met at camp? We talking on the phone for a year. You don't fuck with me on this one. Then she pulled out a newspaper clipping. I befriended a girl at camp when I was 13, but we never left amicably. In truth, I taped her mouth shut and her hands behind her back in the community bathroom late one night and carved birthmarks all over her body. She's still alive and disfigured severely. I cut off her nose and snipped off the tip of her tongue because when she begged, I only wanted her to shut up. And Mum told me that all these years she's had to feed me the fantasy that I'd had a sister born undetected by sonogram, because it was a story I'd come up with and made myself believe. The phone I used for all those years was never plugged in. My dad used to feed my delusions. I cut his throat in the middle of the night 10 years ago. Then finally, I asked my mum one last thing. Mum, if I've committed such monstrosities, then why am I free? Why am I left to my own devices in my own home while fighting cancer? She could only say one thing. Honey, look at your arms and legs. My wrists and ankles are bound to a hospital bed, inside of a psych ward where I've been living for 10 years. I've just taken my lithium an hour ago, and my doctor had me tell my story on voice record while it's still vivid, before I inevitably slip back into my hallucinations. It was my first time at Loveland Ski Resort in Colorado. The first day of my trip, in fact. For the uninitiated, if your lungs aren't used to really thin air, top mountains with the summit at 13,000 feet, a common physiological reaction that occurs is something called altitude sickness. Symptoms generally include, but aren't limited to, hyperventilation, dizziness, nausea, and vertigo. Perhaps this is what caused me to run astray down the mountain directly into the path of an already fallen avalanche. In layman's terms, basically you go from riding on top of snow to suddenly drowning head deep into freezing powder. I didn't realize it happened at first. I fainted briefly at the 80-degree slope began to level out, and awoke buried inside a tomb of snow. I could have been 6 inches or 6 feet under, literally and figuratively. As my eyes began to open, I was blinded by the sun relentlessly falling into my face. No matter how hard I tried to wipe it away, it just kept coming. Then came the breathing difficulty. As my consciousness began to reveal itself fully, I instantly panicked. Imagine falling out of a raft over rapids and getting your foot caught between rocks, simultaneously unable to free yourself or be able to inhale. Each breath I tried to take only caused more snow to pile down my throat, into my quickly filling lungs. I had to think fast. I didn't know whether I was upside down or not, so I began to spit compulsively until I felt it dripping down my face, in the wrong direction. I was upside down in a tomb of snow, likely digging myself deeper and deeper the more I thrashed and struggled. I nearly gave up, when miraculously I was pulled into the oxygenated atmosphere by a resort employee in a snowmobile. My board was poking up out of the snow. Luckily, after something like this, an avalanche occurs. Employees are paid to watch these particular parts of the mountain, in case any idiots like myself go barreling into them at 35 miles an hour without caution, or regard to any semblance of safety. The man later informed me, after ripping me upright by the end of the board, that had he not been there, I'd have only dug myself deeper and would have eventually died. I don't remember my saviour's name. He quickly rowed me to safety, and EMS workers showed up in just minutes to check my vitals and give me CPR. I also spat up 1/4 of a gallon of water. I might have drowned from that, even though I was pulled to safety, if not timely enough. I wish I could thank him. I hope he finds the story and reads it. It happened in 2012. If you read this, you know who you are, so thank you. After my grandma died, I began staying weekends with my grandpa in his new apartment to help him cope with the loneliness. I slept on the pull-out bed from the living room couch. One night, I shut off the TV and began to doze off. There was a wooden clock on the mantel, and the ticking beats at backdrop of silence never failed to lull me to sleep. As I was falling asleep, I heard a noise come from the kitchen, a sound that has always disturbed me since childhood. It was the sound of shuffling. I had a somnambulant cousin who used to sleepwalk when he should stay over. One night I found her standing in the bathroom closet in the middle of the night, and ever since I've had nightmares about her. The footsteps halted once they reached the dining room carpet. This scared me even more. I couldn't move, gripping the covers so tightly I could feel the sweat forming on my palms. The footsteps ceased, but something truly horrific followed. The sound of gliding across the carpet. I threw the covers over my head and pulled the pillow down around my ears, but I still heard it. Like movers were pushing a heavy dresser through the living room. I shuddered at the thought while my heart began to race. This is when it happened. The end of the couch where my feet rested slumped down with the weight of someone sitting, and whomever it was, they were pressing down on my covers, now wrapped snugly around my legs. I tried kicking and thrashing, but it wouldn't move. Finally, I shoved out, "Come on, I know you're here. Please leave me alone." It only worsened. I could feel this person now climbing up onto the sofa, like I was about to be straddled. And this is when I thrust myself off the couch and ran to the hallway, throwing on all the lights. But nobody was there. I left everything the way it was, flicked off the lights, and got in bed with my grandpa. He didn't even wake up. That night I had harrowing nightmares. At one point I woke up drenched in sweat after dreaming that I'd been eating mealworms and maggots out of a bag of chips. I'd literally take my mouth after waking, but was too scared to go in the bathroom and gargle Ursurine. The next morning, Grandpa asked me why I was in his bed. I told him everything, and he just stared at the floor in silence. I brought up the possibility of it being Grandma, that maybe she was just checking on me, and maybe I'd blown it out of proportion. I trembled at the assuredness of his response. He said, "Grandma died at Forbes Hospital." My heart stands to palm doing this much. So it couldn't have been her. I didn't ask you or your brother to stay here because I'm lonely and sad. I asked you to come here because of that. I asked him once again, "Are you sure it's not Grandma?" His response terrifies me still to this day. You said, "No, it isn't. Whatever it is, it tells me it hates me and wants me to die." Grandpa died a year later. My mum took pee on him and moved him into our house not long after this occurrence. When he lived in with us, his mind began to deteriorate with Alzheimer's, and at night he'd wander up and down the halls. Sometimes I'd hear him shuffling around. Other times I'd swear I heard gliding, but never chose to look. During this time, I'd often find my dog hiding under my bed. I wonder if he had brought it along with him, and even worse, if it took him when he died. I was walking down a trail on my way home from my new friend Haley's house. The woods are thick but isolated. Myself and my friend Haley are from 2 out of 5 families in our entire town. Our parents own hundreds of acres and several gas wells. It feels nice to be able to walk alone in the middle of the night without looking over your shoulder, like we used to have to do in the city. As I trekked through a trail carved out by and only known by us who live out here, I heard branches crunching all around me on my way back, in what sounded like running strides. It startled me. I assumed it was my brother. Him and my friends love this. I'm only 13, so they know how scared I get. They'd always do this to me when we lived in Chicago. But it isn't him. I called my dad. It's 1:45 a.m. and he was livid. Aside from the promise of being grounded all week, he told my brother he's in bed, and authoritatively asked me exactly where it was. I told him I was on my way home from Haley's house. Just then, Dad said, in a very worried and honest tone, "Olivia, baby, run home as fast as you can." Just as I told him whose house I was coming from, he told me that he'd just received a call from Haley's mum. I'm new to this town. I just met Haley on Tuesday when we were at a funeral. She seemed fun and a lot like me. But Dad just told me that Haley is missing, and so is her dad's pickaxe. I saw it leaning against the side of the house as I left and walked through the backyard. Dad told me Haley is a very sick girl and to just hurry. If he'd known I went to her house, he would have immediately come and got me. I thought it was strange when I was in Haley's bathroom, sitting on the toilet, when she snuck in right in front of me, hopped into an empty bathtub, and hid behind the curtain, but didn't jump out. Instead, she crawled on her hands and knees and chased me to her room. I thought she was just joking around, but her face strangely held an expression of a scowl, not dumb laughter. After that, though, she snapped right back into the normal fun girl, and everything was fine. As I ran through the woods, dropping my purse on the way, my legs moved so fast and burned so much before I ran into Dad just beyond the backyard at the end of the trail, almost knocking him over with the flashlight. He told me to run inside. I waited for him in the living room, chewing off my nails simultaneously. Finally he came in, and frantically began locking the doors. He assured me we'd be okay, and I went to bed. I woke up just a half hour ago to a strange noise just outside my bedroom window. It's 3:13 a.m. I was terrified to pull aside the curtain, imagining only the worst, Haley's face. I looked outside and saw nothing until I turned on my phone light. I just had to be sure. I shouldn't have. In the glare of the light, written on my window in dewy fingerprint form, but spelled backwards, is the word, almost. I shouldn't have become her friend.